Sarah Chen sat in the cold metal chair and tried not to show her anger. Around her, 12 different alien species talked about humans like they were not even in the room. The Galactic Council chamber was huge, with seats arranged in a circle. Each alien species had their own section with fancy decorations and comfortable chairs. The human section had 3 basic metal chairs and a small table. For 18 months, Sarah had come to these meetings. For 18 months, she had listened to insults and demands. For 18 months, she had tried to be polite and diplomatic. Today, her patience was gone. The Vorthak representative stood up. His body was made of what looked like living crystal, and when he moved, light bounced off him in sharp angles. His voice sounded like breaking glass when he spoke. "The human species is too dangerous to be trusted with full membership," he said. "They fight wars on their own planet. They cannot control their emotions. Their technology is basic and crude. We must protect the galaxy from their violent nature." Several other aliens nodded in agreement. The Zalari ambassador waved her tentacles in what Sarah knew was their version of laughter. The Zalari looked like giant squids with purple skin and too many eyes. Their ambassador had made it clear from day one that she thought humans were nothing more than smart animals. "Indeed," the Zalari said, her voice wet and bubbling. "Humans solve problems with violence first and think later. They are not ready for civilized society. Perhaps in a few thousand years they might be ready to join the outer circles of membership. For now they should focus on learning from their betters." Sarah's hands tightened on the armrests of her chair. Behind her she could hear her 2 assistants shifting uncomfortably. David Park, her military advisor, was probably fighting the urge to say something that would get them all thrown out. Maria Santos, the science attaché, was likely taking notes on every insult for her reports back to Earth. The Corvani representative, a bird-like creature with golden feathers, spoke next. "The humans have shown they cannot be trusted with advanced technology. Look at their history. They use every new discovery to make better weapons. Give them fusion power and they make fusion bombs. Give them space travel and they build warships. This is rich coming from species that conquered half the galaxy before forming this council," David whispered to Sarah. She shot him a warning look, but she agreed with him completely. The Hikari ambassador, who looked like a walking tree with too many branches, made a sound like wind through leaves. "The human colonies in the outer systems are growing too fast. They establish settlements without permission. They mine resources without environmental studies. They act without thinking about consequences. This shows their primitive nature." Sarah stood up slowly. The chamber went quiet. All eyes turned to her, and she could feel the weight of their judgment. Most of them saw her as a representative of a backward species that had barely learned to travel between stars. They treated her like a child who had wandered into an adult conversation. "You speak of our wars," Sarah said, her voice clear and steady. "But every species in this room fought wars before joining the council. The Vorthak wiped out 3 species before they decided diplomacy was more profitable. The Zalari enslaved entire star systems. The Corvani turned their own homeworld into a wasteland before learning to care about environments. The Vorthak representative's crystal body flickered with different colors, a sign of anger. That was different. We learned from our mistakes. We grew beyond our primitive phase. Humans are still stuck in theirs." "We learned too," Sarah replied. "We learned that we can solve problems without waiting for committee meetings that last for decades. We learned that sometimes action is better than endless discussion. We learned that survival requires strength, not just pretty words." The chamber erupted in angry sounds. Several aliens started talking at once, their voices mixing into a mess of clicks, buzzes, and strange musical tones. Sarah waited for them to quiet down. The Zalari ambassador's tentacles writhed faster. "This is exactly what we mean. Humans are aggressive and impatient. They do not understand the careful balance required for galactic peace." "Careful balance?" Sarah laughed, and the sound was sharp in the formal chamber. "You mean the balance where 12 species make decisions for hundreds of others? The balance where you decide who is ready for advanced technology and who has to wait? The balance where you take resources from younger species and call it trade agreements?" The Hikari made angry leaf-rustling sounds. "Humans do not understand the complexity of governing a galaxy. Some species need guidance. Some are not ready for full independence. The council provides stability and order." Sarah looked around the chamber at the faces staring at her. Some showed anger, others showed disgust, and a few showed what might have been fear. "Good. Let them be afraid. For 18 months, I have sat in this room and listened to you debate whether humans deserve to exist as equals in this galaxy. You have questioned our intelligence, our morality, our right to expand and grow. You have demanded that we give up our colonies. You have insisted that we accept supervised status like children who cannot be trusted with sharp objects. She gathered the papers and data tablets from the human section's table. Her movements were slow and deliberate, making sure everyone in the chamber could see what she was doing. Today, you have gone too far. Today, you demanded that humanity surrender our outer colonies and accept permanent junior status in your galactic order. Today, you made it clear that no matter what we do, no matter how we prove ourselves, you will never see us as equals. The Vorthak representative stepped forward. If you cannot accept the wisdom of older species, perhaps you should return to your single world and think about your place in the galaxy. Sarah smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. That is exactly what we are going to do. She nodded to David and Maria, who immediately began packing their equipment. The chamber watched in surprise as the human delegation prepared to leave. We came here in good faith, Sarah continued. We offered friendship, cooperation, and shared knowledge. We hoped to find a place among the stars where all species could work together as equals. Instead, we found prejudice, condescension, and the same old imperial thinking that has plagued every civilization that ever gained power. The Zalari ambassador's tentacles stopped moving. You cannot simply leave the negotiations. These talks are for the stability of the galaxy. Your species needs guidance whether you admit it or not. Our species needs many things, Sarah said, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Guidance from species that think we are primitive animals is not one of them. She walked toward the chamber doors, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. David and Maria followed her, their faces showing the same cold determination that Sarah felt. At the doors, Sarah stopped and turned back to face the council. The aliens were staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to anger to something that might have been worry. Humanity formally withdraws from these negotiations, effective immediately, she announced. We will no longer waste our time trying to convince you that we deserve basic respect. We will no longer beg for the privilege of being treated as equals. We will no longer pretend that this council represents anything more than the desires of 12 species to maintain their power over everyone else. The chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens jumped to their feet, making angry sounds in dozens of different languages. Some demanded that she sit back down and continue the negotiations. Others seemed relieved that the troublesome humans were finally leaving. Sarah raised her voice over the noise. You will hear from us again. But next time, it will not be as supplicants begging for acceptance. Next time, it will be as equals demanding the respect we have earned. The doors slid shut behind the human delegation with a soft hiss. Sarah did not look back. In the chamber behind them, the aliens slowly returned to their seats. The Vorthak representative made a sound like tinkling bells, which Sarah knew was their version of laughter. Finally, he said, the primitive apes have realized their place. Now we can get back to important matters without their constant interruptions. But not all the aliens looked happy. A few stared at the closed doors with worried expressions. They had heard something in Sarah's voice that the others had missed. It was not the sound of defeat. It was the sound of someone who had just made a very important decision. The galaxy was about to change. The council just did not know it yet. 6 months passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council chambers. Chancellor Zix of the Hebridean Collective filed his weekly report with satisfaction. The galaxy was peaceful again. Trade routes flowed smoothly between member worlds. No more angry human voices disrupted the careful diplomacy that kept civilization running. Zix was proud of his species' role as peacekeepers. The Hebrideans looked like tall, thin humans with blue-gray skin and large black eyes. They had been mediators and diplomats for thousands of years. Their patient nature and logical minds made them perfect for resolving conflicts between other species. The Chancellor's office overlooked the main trade hub of Nexus Station, the Council's administrative center. Through the wide windows, he could see ships from dozens of species docking and departing. Cargo vessels brought goods from across the galaxy. Passenger liners carried diplomats and business leaders to important meetings. Everything was orderly and predictable, just as it should be. The human problem seems to have resolved itself, Zix told his assistant, a young Hebridean named Kira. She had been worried about the long-term effects of humanity's withdrawal, but Zix knew better. In his 300 years of diplomatic service, he had seen many young species make dramatic exits from negotiations. They always came back eventually, usually more willing to accept reasonable terms. Kira pulled up the latest intelligence reports on her data tablet. Sir, the monitoring stations show complete absence of human ships in the disputed territories. No military buildup near their colonies. No attempts to contact council members through back channels. It appears they have truly withdrawn from galactic affairs. Zix nodded approvingly, exactly as I predicted. Humans are emotional creatures. They needed time to cool down and think about their situation. When they realize they cannot survive alone in the galaxy, they will return with a more cooperative attitude. The reports painted a picture of human retreat that satisfied the Council completely. The outer colonies that humans had claimed were showing no signs of expansion. No new settlements appeared on long-range scans. Human trade with non-Council species had dropped to almost nothing. Most importantly, there were no signs of military preparation or aggressive posturing. On the bridge of the Corvani exploration vessel Golden Wing, Captain Theska studied similar reports with pleasure. The bird-like Corvani had always resented human expansion into systems they considered their own territory. Now, with humans apparently gone, those rich mining worlds were available for proper development. Begin extraction operations on the Kepler 442 system, Theska ordered her crew. The humans claimed it 18 months ago, but they never established permanent facilities. The mineral wealth there will serve the Council well. Her navigation officer, a younger Corvani with bright red feathers, checked his instruments. Captain, should we scan for human presence before we begin mining? Our long-range sensors show no activity, but the system is at the edge of their claimed territory. Theska's feathers ruffled with amusement. Scan if it makes you feel better, but humans have clearly abandoned their grandiose expansion plans. They have learned that claiming territory and actually developing it are two different things. The mining operation went smoothly. Automated extractors were deployed on 3 different asteroids. Processing stations began refining valuable metals and rare elements. Within weeks, the Corvani had established a profitable operation in what had once been human space. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The Zalari rerouted their trade networks through systems humans had once patrolled. Their cargo ships reported clear shipping lanes and no interference from human customs officials. The profits from these new routes exceeded expectations, proving that human presence had been nothing but an obstacle to efficient commerce. Ambassador Velthari of the Zalari species floated in her private quarters aboard the trade station Deep Current. Her purple tentacles writhed with satisfaction as she reviewed the financial reports. Humans had tried to establish their own trade regulations in several systems, demanding inspections and tariffs that slowed down business. Now those obstacles were gone. The young species always overestimate their importance, she said to her aide, a smaller Zalari with darker skin. Humans thought they could compete with species that have been trading across the galaxy for millennia. They have learned the cost of arrogance. But not all the reports were completely reassuring. Deep in the intelligence files, strange anomalies appeared that troubled the few council members who bothered to read the detailed analyses. Commander Brix of Council Intelligence was one of the few who noticed the inconsistencies. His species, the Mantari, were known for their attention to detail and analytical minds. They looked like upright insects with multiple arms and compound eyes that could process vast amounts of visual information simultaneously. Brix's report landed on Chancellor Zix's desk 3 months after the human withdrawal. The Chancellor almost filed it without reading, but something about the classification level made him pause. Unusual activity in former human territory, the report was titled. Brix had documented several incidents that did not fit the pattern of human retreat. Human colonies that should have been struggling without council trade were somehow thriving. New settlements appeared in systems far from traditional shipping routes, places where it should have been impossible to maintain supply lines. Most puzzling were the reports of human ships appearing in impossible locations. A Mantari patrol had detected a human vessel near the galactic core, thousands of light-years from the nearest human colony. When they moved to intercept, the ship vanished from sensors completely. The patrol leader reported that the human ship had been there one moment and gone the next, with no trace of hyperspace entry or exit. Similar reports came from trading posts on the galactic rim. Human ships would appear at remote stations, conduct quick business transactions, and disappear again. The traders described technology they had never seen before, devices that seemed more advanced than anything in Council databases. Most disturbing were the reports from neutral species. The Drakmori, a warlike people who had always remained independent of Council authority, had suddenly begun upgrading their military forces. Intelligence sources reported that Drakmori ships now carried weapons and shields that were significantly more advanced than their previous technology. When questioned, Drakmori representatives claimed they had developed the improvements themselves, but the energy signatures matched no known Drakmori technology. The weapons bore similarities to human designs, but were far more sophisticated than anything humans had previously demonstrated. Chancellor Zix read through Brix's report twice, then set it aside. The intelligence officer was known for seeing patterns where none existed. These were probably just isolated incidents blown out of proportion by paranoid field agents. Humans are not advanced enough to pose a real threat, Zix told himself. Their technology is crude, their science is basic, and their industrial capacity is limited. Whatever they are doing in their remote territories, it cannot be significant on a galactic scale. The Chancellor's confidence was shared throughout the Council. When the Vorthak representative mentioned the strange reports during a routine session, the other members dismissed them with casual indifference. Humans are probably developing some new mining technique or improved ship engine, the Hikari ambassador said, his tree-like branches swaying with amusement. Whatever it is, it will be years behind our own capabilities. Young species always think their small innovations are revolutionary. The Zalari ambassador agreed completely. Humans lack the patience for true scientific advancement. They want quick results instead of careful research. Any technology they develop will be unstable and unreliable. We have seen this pattern with dozens of species over the millennia. But while the Council dismissed the reports, other groups in the galaxy were paying closer attention. Independent traders spoke quietly among themselves about the strange human ships and their impossible journeys. Pirates who used to prey on human colonies found their targets suddenly defended by vessels that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. On the fringes of Council space, species that had never been invited to join the galactic government began receiving visits from human diplomats. These meetings were not reported to Council intelligence. The humans spoke of trade agreements and mutual defense pacts, offering technology and protection in exchange for resources and strategic cooperation. The Corvin Trade Federation, a group of independent merchants who had always chafed under Council regulations, began reporting massive profits from new routes through human space. Their captains described human stations that appeared overnight in empty systems, offering advanced goods in exchange for raw materials. But when Council investigators tried to follow these trade routes, they found empty space. The human stations were gone, leaving no trace of their existence. It was as if an entire shadow economy had learned to appear and disappear at will. 6 months after the human withdrawal, Chancellor Zix filed his official report on the galactic situation. His conclusion was optimistic and confident. The human crisis has been successfully resolved through patient diplomacy and firm leadership, he wrote. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the most secret laboratory in human space. The facility was hidden inside a hollow asteroid in the Vega system, far from any shipping routes or Council monitoring stations. Around her, the brightest minds from Earth and the colonies worked on projects that would have seemed impossible just 2 years ago. Elena was tired. She had been working 18-hour days for months, but the breakthrough they had achieved made every sleepless night worth it. In her hands, she held a device no larger than her palm that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The quantum tunnel generator is stable, she announced to her team. We can now punch through space-time itself instead of following the old hyperspace lanes. The laboratory erupted in quiet celebration. Unlike the aliens in the Galactic Council, humans knew when to keep their victories secret. Every person in this room understood that their work could mean the difference between human survival and extinction. Dr. James Chen, Elena's second-in-command and Sarah's younger brother, examined the readouts on his screen. The test ship completed the journey from Sol to Alpha Centauri in 6 hours. The old hyperspace route would have taken 3 weeks. Elena nodded with satisfaction. The Council species had spent thousands of years perfecting hyperspace travel, but they had become comfortable with their limitations. They accepted that certain journeys took weeks or months. They planned their strategies around these fixed travel times. They never imagined that someone might find a completely different way to move through space. "How dangerous is it?" asked Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's safety specialist. She had been against testing the new drive system without more computer simulations. "Extremely dangerous," Elena admitted. "The quantum fields required for tunneling can kill a ship's crew instantly if the calculations are wrong. The margin for error is less than 0.001%. One mistake and the ship gets torn apart at the atomic level." James smiled grimly. "Good thing humans are better at split-second decisions than committee meetings." That was the key difference, Elena realized. The council species were careful and methodical. They spent decades testing new technologies before implementing them. They formed committees to study problems and subcommittees to study the committees. They valued safety and consensus above all else. Humans were different. They were willing to take calculated risks that other species found terrifying. Human pilots could make intuitive decisions in milliseconds that alien computers needed minutes to process. Human engineers could improvise solutions using whatever materials were available, instead of waiting for perfect conditions. The quantum tunnel drives were just the beginning. In another section of the asteroid laboratory, Dr. Sarah Kim worked on the second revolutionary breakthrough: manufacturing systems that could build entire starships in a fraction of the time required by council methods. Sarah had studied captured alien technology for months, not to copy it, but to understand why it took so long to produce. The answer was typical of council thinking. They built everything through consensus. Every component had to be approved by multiple committees. Every design change required extensive consultation with dozens of specialists. Every production run needed environmental impact studies and cultural sensitivity reviews. "The council takes 2 years to build a single destroyer-class vessel," Sarah explained to her team of engineers. "We can build the same ship in 6 weeks using our new automated systems." The human manufacturing approach was radically different. Instead of committees, they used artificial intelligence systems that could make thousands of design decisions per second. Instead of lengthy consultation processes, they used rapid prototyping and continuous improvement. Instead of perfect planning, they embraced controlled chaos and adaptive problem-solving. The AI systems were perhaps the most frightening part of human technological development, at least from the Council's perspective. Most galactic species were terrified of artificial intelligence, viewing it as an existential threat to biological life. They had strict laws limiting AI development and refused to create systems that could operate independently. Humans had no such fears. They had been working alongside increasingly sophisticated computers for centuries. They understood that AI was a tool like any other, that could be dangerous if misused but incredibly powerful when properly controlled. Admiral Marcus Torres observed the manufacturing process from the facility's command center. He was a career military officer who had spent his entire adult life preparing for wars that might never come. Now finally, he was watching humanity prepare for the challenges that lay ahead. "Show me the production numbers," he ordered his aide, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park. Lisa pulled up the holographic displays showing manufacturing output across 12 hidden facilities. "Sir, we're currently producing 1 heavy cruiser every 3 weeks. Destroyer production is up to 2 ships per week. Fighter craft production has reached 50 units per day." Marcus nodded approvingly. The numbers were impressive, but more important was the technology going into each ship. Human vessels now incorporated stealth systems that made them invisible to Council sensors. Their weapons used focused quantum energy that could punch through any known shield system. Their armor was made from metamaterials that could adapt to different types of damage. But the most significant advantage was strategic mobility. With quantum tunnel drives, human fleets could appear anywhere in the galaxy within days instead of weeks or months. They could strike Council targets and disappear before enemy reinforcements arrived. They could defend human colonies from multiple light-years away. "What about the political situation?" Marcus asked. Lisa switched to intelligence reports from across the galaxy. "The Drakmori Alliance is proceeding according to plan. They're providing us with warrior expertise in exchange for military technology. The Corvin Trade Federation is giving us access to their commercial networks. The Nexari have emerged from isolation to share archaeological data about pre-Council civilizations." This was perhaps humanity's greatest innovation. Instead of trying to join the existing galactic order, they were creating their own. While the Council debated humanity's worthiness for membership, humans were building relationships with species that had never been invited to join the Council in the first place. The Drakmori were a perfect example. They were a warrior culture that valued strength and direct action over diplomatic ceremony. The Council had always viewed them as too violent and unpredictable for membership. But humans understood that the Drakmori's military experience could be valuable, and their honor-based culture meant they were trustworthy allies once agreements were made. Captain Zhang Wei of the exploration vessel New Horizon reported back from his mission to Drakmori space. The alliance ceremony went exactly as planned. Their war chiefs are impressed by our quantum tunnel technology and stealth systems. In exchange, they're teaching our tactical teams their combat doctrines and sharing intelligence about Council military capabilities. The intelligence was proving invaluable. The Drakmori had been fighting skirmishes with Council border patrols for centuries. They knew the weaknesses in Council ship designs, the limitations of Council tactics, and the political tensions between different Council species. But the most important partnership was with the Nexari, an ancient species that had withdrawn from galactic affairs millions of years ago. Most species believed the Nexari were extinct, but human deep space explorers had discovered their hidden enclaves in the galactic core region. Dr. Rebecca Liu, humanity's chief archaeologist, led the team working with Nexari researchers. They've been studying the ruins of civilizations that existed long before the current Council species even evolved, she reported. Their archaeological data suggests that the galaxy has gone through multiple cycles of rise and fall. The Council represents just the latest attempt at galactic government. The Nexari shared maps of ancient trade routes, locations of forgotten technology caches, and most importantly, the locations of species that had chosen to remain hidden rather than deal with Council politics. These hidden civilizations were potential allies who might be willing to support an alternative to Council domination. Meanwhile, human intelligence networks were growing throughout Council space. Every human diplomat, trader, or tourist who had ever visited a Council world was now part of a vast information-gathering system. They used quantum communication, devices smaller than coins to send encrypted reports back to human command centers. The intelligence painted a picture of a galactic government that was far more fragile than it appeared. The Council maintained power through carefully balanced fear and economic dependence, but many member species harbored resentments about their treatment. Non-member species were often exploited through unfair trade agreements and military intimidation. Commander Sarah Mitchell ran the intelligence operations from a space station hidden in the Oort cloud of an uninhabited system. The Council's strength is also its weakness, she explained to her team. They've created a system where 12 species dominate hundreds of others. That creates a lot of potential dissatisfaction we can exploit. Human agents began making contact with opposition groups on Council worlds. The first sign that something had changed came on a Tuesday morning at Nexus Station. Chancellor Zix was reviewing routine diplomatic reports when his assistant Kira burst into his office without knocking. Her usual calm demeanor was completely gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," she said, activating the holographic display in the center of the room. The display showed an official document that made Zix's blood run cold. The Drakmori Confederation, the most powerful military force outside of Council space, had announced a formal alliance with humanity. The treaty had been signed, ratified, and was already in effect. "When did this happen?" Zix demanded, his voice rising higher than usual. "The announcement came through official channels this morning," Kira replied, her hands shaking as she operated the controls. "But sir, that's not the strangest part. Our intelligence networks detected no prior negotiations between the humans and Drakmori. No diplomatic ships traveled between their territories. No communication intercept suggested any contact at all." Zix stared at the document in confusion. In his 3 centuries of diplomatic experience, he had never seen a major alliance formed without months or years of careful negotiation. Treaties required dozens of meetings, extensive cultural exchanges, and careful relationship building. The logistics alone should have taken months to arrange. "There must be some mistake," he said finally. "Perhaps this is an elaborate deception designed to confuse us." But the treaty was verified through multiple sources. The Drakmori had not only signed an alliance with humanity, but they were already implementing joint military exercises and technology transfers. Drakmori warships were reported near human colonies, and human vessels had been detected in Drakmori space. The news sent shockwaves through the council chambers. An emergency session was called within hours, but the debate quickly devolved into chaos. Different species had different theories about what was happening, and none of them were reassuring. The Vorthak representative's crystal body flickered with agitation. The Drakmori have always been unpredictable, but this alliance makes no strategic sense. What could humans possibly offer them that they cannot obtain elsewhere? Ambassador Velthari of the Zalari floated nervously in her environmental tank. Perhaps the humans have made promises they cannot keep. The Drakmori will discover their limitations soon enough and abandon the alliance. But even as the council debated, more disturbing news arrived. The Corvan Trade Federation, a group of independent merchants, reported massive profits from new trade routes through human space. Their cargo manifest described goods that should not have existed. Quantum processors that operated at room temperature, adaptive armor that could shift between different configurations, gravity manipulators small enough to be portable. Captain Yeske of the Corvani merchant vessel Silver Current filed a report that troubled military analysts throughout council space. The human trading stations appeared overnight in systems that were empty just days before. The structures are unlike anything in our architectural databases. They seem to be constructed from materials that bend light around themselves, making them difficult to detect even at close range. More reports followed from across the galaxy. The Nexari, a species that most aliens believed was extinct, had emerged from millions of years of isolation to announce research partnerships with humanity. Ancient archaeological sites that had been abandoned for millennia were suddenly active with joint human-Nexari expeditions. Dr. Korveth, the Council's chief xenoarchaeologist, reviewed the Nexari announcements with growing alarm. The Nexari possess historical knowledge spanning millions of years. Their emergence from isolation is unprecedented. If they are sharing this knowledge with humans, it could provide technological insights we cannot match. But the most troubling reports came from Council member worlds themselves. The hegemony of Keth, one of the most militarily powerful Council species, reported mysterious equipment failures at their naval shipyards. The Zalari complained of supply line disruptions that seemed to target their most important trade routes. Vorthak mining operations in former human territory encountered technical problems that their engineers could not explain. Commander Brix of Council Intelligence compiled these incidents into a classified report that painted a disturbing picture. The pattern suggests coordinated harassment of Council assets by unknown forces. The attacks are too sophisticated to be random piracy, but too subtle to be open warfare. The breakthrough in understanding came from an unexpected source. A hegemony of Keth patrol vessel detected unusual energy signatures during a routine border sweep. When they investigated, they found something that changed everything. The patrol ship Dominant Strike had been investigating reports of separatist activity in the Keth home system. When they encountered a rebel fleet that should not have existed, the separatists had been a minor annoyance for decades, operating outdated ships and using guerrilla tactics to avoid direct confrontation. But this fleet was different. The rebel ships were equipped with technology that neutralized the Keth military's numerical advantage. Shields that adapted to different weapon types, engines that allowed impossible acceleration and maneuverability, weapons that punched through Keth armor like it was made of paper. Commander Zethra of the Four, Dominant Strike, watched in horror as his superior fleet was systematically destroyed by rebels who had been nothing more than terrorists just months before. His ship barely escaped, and only because the rebels seemed more interested in disabling than destroying their opponents. The energy signatures match human quantum technology, Zethra reported to his superiors. But the sophistication level is far beyond anything humans have previously demonstrated. Either their technological development has accelerated beyond our projections, or they have access to knowledge sources we do not understand. The post-battle analysis revealed the truth that the Council had been trying to ignore. Debris from the rebel ships contained human-manufactured components, but the overall design incorporated principles from multiple species. The rebels were not just using human technology. They were using hybrid systems that combined human innovation with knowledge from other civilizations. The implications were staggering. If humans were forming technological partnerships with multiple species, they were not just building ships and weapons. They were creating an entirely new technological foundation that could surpass anything the Council possessed. Chancellor Zix called another emergency session, but the mood in the chamber was very different from their confident discussions just months before. The aliens who had dismissed human capabilities with casual arrogance were now faced with evidence that humanity had become a serious threat to galactic stability. We may have underestimated the human response to our diplomatic policies, Zix admitted, his voice carefully controlled. It appears that their withdrawal from negotiations was not surrender, but preparation for an alternative approach to galactic politics. The Hikari ambassador's branches rustled with worry. Our intelligence suggests that humans have established relationships with dozens of non-council species. They are building their own diplomatic network outside our influence. More than that, added the Mantari intelligence chief, his compound eyes processing multiple data streams simultaneously. They appear to be offering those species something we cannot match: rapid technological advancement and military protection without the bureaucratic constraints that council membership requires. The session was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Galactic Communication Network. Messages were being broadcast simultaneously to hundreds of worlds using a transmission method that bypassed all known communication systems. The broadcasts were coming from human sources, but they were reaching places where no human ships had been detected. The messages were simple but devastating. They contained detailed information about council policies that had never been made public. Secret agreements between council members to suppress technological development among younger species. Evidence of economic exploitation disguised as trade partnerships. Recordings of private council sessions where members discussed other species with casual contempt. Ambassador Velthari watched in horror as the broadcasts reached Zalari space. Her own species' worlds were receiving evidence of how the Council had systematically exploited their resources while claiming to provide protection and guidance. How did they obtain these recordings? She demanded. Our communication systems are encrypted with quantum protocols that cannot be broken. Apparently they can be broken, replied Commander Brix grimly. Or the humans have developed entirely new methods of intelligence gathering that our security systems cannot detect. The broadcasts had immediate effects across the galaxy. On dozens of council worlds, protests erupted as populations learned the truth about their treatment by galactic authorities. Opposition movements that had been suppressed for centuries suddenly found themselves equipped with both information and resources to challenge their governments. The Corvin Trade Federation announced that they were reconsidering their relationship with council trade regulations. The Drakmori Confederation publicly stated that they were willing to provide military protection for any species seeking independence from council. Sarah Chen stood in the same council chamber where she had walked out 2 years earlier. But everything had changed. The metal chair she had sat in was gone, replaced by an elegant seat befitting the representative of a major galactic power. Behind her stood not 2 assistants but a full diplomatic delegation representing the Terra Alliance, a coalition of over 300 worlds that now rivaled the Council in every measure of power. The chamber itself looked different. Several of the Council species sections were empty, their representatives having withdrawn from the organization in recent months. The remaining aliens looked nervous and uncertain, a far cry from the confident arrogance they had displayed during her last visit. Chancellor Zix sat in his elevated position, but his usual composed demeanor was cracked. His blue-gray skin had taken on a paler shade, and his large black eyes darted nervously between Sarah and the data tablets his assistants kept passing to him with increasingly bad news. Ambassador Chen, he began, his voice carefully formal. The Galactic Council appreciates your willingness to return to diplomatic discussions. We believe that recent misunderstandings can be resolved through careful negotiation and mutual respect. Sarah smiled, and it was not the desperate expression of a supplicant seeking acceptance. It was the confident look of someone who held all the cards in a high-stakes game. Chancellor Zix, you misunderstand the purpose of my visit. I am not here to negotiate humanity's place in your organization. I am here to offer the Council a choice about its place in the galaxy's future. She gestured to her aide, who activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The projection showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, with different regions marked in various colors. The blue areas marked traditional Council space, but vast sections of the galaxy now glowed with the gold of Terra Alliance territory. 2 years ago, you told us that humans needed guidance and supervision. You demanded that we surrender our colonies and accept junior status under your authority. Today, I present you with the results of rejecting that guidance. The display zoomed in to show specific systems. Where Council intelligence had reported empty space or struggling human colonies, the reality was completely different. Thriving civilizations filled dozens of star systems. Industrial complexes produced goods at rates that dwarfed Council manufacturing capabilities. Military installations protected shipping lanes and maintained order across vast regions of space. The Vorthak representative's crystal body flickered with colors that indicated shock and disbelief. This is impossible. Our monitoring stations detected no such development in human territory. Your monitoring stations detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Sarah replied calmly. Human technology has advanced considerably since our last meeting. We learned to hide from you while we built something better than what you offered. She nodded to her technical specialist, who began the demonstration that would shatter the Council's remaining illusions about human limitations. Without warning, human ships began materializing inside the station's supposedly impregnable defenses, not landing in the docking bays, not requesting permission to approach, but simply appearing in the space around the Council chambers as if they had stepped out of empty air. The station's defense systems screamed alarms and activated automated weapons, but the targeting computers could not lock onto the human vessels. The ships seemed to exist in a state of quantum flux, simultaneously present and absent from normal spacetime. Quantum tunnel drives, Sarah explained as the Council members stared in terror at the ships surrounding their station. We no longer require your hyperspace lanes or your navigation permits. We can appear anywhere in the galaxy within hours, not weeks. Chancellor Zix's aide whispered urgently in his ear, and his expression grew even more troubled. Our defense grid cannot target these vessels. Their technology appears to operate outside the known laws of physics. The known laws according to Council science, Sarah corrected. We have learned that your species' understanding of the universe is more limited than you believed. Our alliance with the Nexari has provided us with insights that predate your civilizations by millions of years. The display changed to show the true scope of human technological advancement. Manufacturing facilities that could construct entire fleets in weeks instead of years. Communication systems that could transmit information instantaneously across galactic distances. Weapon systems that could penetrate any known defense. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. Sarah's intelligence specialist activated the second part of their presentation. Recordings of private Council communications, intercepted by human spy networks that had apparently been monitoring galactic affairs for months without detection. The chamber filled with the voices of Council members discussing their true opinions of the species they governed, casual references to primitive cultures that needed to be controlled for their own good, cynical calculations about how much exploitation a species could endure before rebelling, contemptuous laughter about the naive idealism of younger civilizations that believed in equality and justice. You spoke of our emotional instability and violent nature, Sarah said as the recordings played. But what we hear in your own words is the casual cruelty of a system built on the assumption that might makes right. You have governed the galaxy through fear, manipulation, and the systematic suppression of any species that might challenge your authority. The recordings were broadcasting simultaneously across the galaxy through human quantum communication networks. On hundreds of worlds, populations were learning the truth about their government's real attitudes toward them. The political impact was immediate and devastating. Ambassador Velthari's tentacles writhed in distress as she watched her own words being broadcast to Zilari colonies. She had been recorded describing subject species as useful animals who should be grateful for Council protection. The riots on Zilari worlds had already begun. This is a violation of diplomatic immunity, she protested weakly. Private communications between Council members are protected under galactic law. Whose law? Sarah asked pointedly. The law written by your Council to protect your Council's interests. We no longer recognize your authority to create laws that govern species without their consent. The chamber erupted into chaos as the remaining Council members realized the full scope of what was happening. Their communications had been compromised for months, possibly years. Their military assets were vulnerable to attack from ships that could appear without warning. Their political authority was crumbling as subject species learned the truth about their treatment. But Sarah was not finished. The final part of her presentation revealed the true extent of the Terra Alliance's political reach. The display showed formal alliance agreements with over 50 independent species, mutual defense pacts with another 100 worlds, and trade relationships that spanned half the galaxy. While you debated our worthiness for membership in your organization, we built our own, she announced. The Terra Alliance offers what your council never could: genuine equality, rapid technological advancement, and protection without political strings attached. Chancellor Zix made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Ambassador Chen, surely we can reach some accommodation. The Council is prepared to offer humanity full membership with equal voting rights. We can address the concerns you have raised through proper diplomatic channels. Sarah's laugh was sharp and without humor. Full membership? Equal voting rights? You offer us the privilege of joining a system built on oppression and maintained through deception. Why would we want to be part of something we are working to replace? The truth of humanity's position became clear to even the most stubborn council members. This was not a negotiation between a young species seeking acceptance and an established government considering their application. This was a confrontation between two incompatible visions of galactic civilization. You have a choice, Sarah continued, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. You can adapt to a galaxy where species earn respect through their actions rather than their age. You can join a community based on merit and mutual benefit instead of arbitrary hierarchies. Or you can maintain your current course and watch as the galaxy moves beyond your control. As if to emphasize her point, alerts began flashing throughout the chamber. Council members received urgent communications from their home governments, reporting mass demonstrations, independence movements, and in some cases, outright secession from council authority. The Terra Alliance was not conquering the galaxy through military force. They were offering an alternative that species across the galaxy were choosing voluntarily. The demonstrations were not foreign-sponsored rebellions. They were spontaneous expressions of populations that had learned they had choices beyond accepting council rule. The age of empires disguised as councils is ending, Sarah announced. The galaxy is choosing governments that serve their citizens rather than exploit them. You can be part of that future, or you can be swept aside by it, but you cannot stop it. She gathered her materials with the same deliberate precision she had used 2 years earlier, but now the gesture carried completely different implications.